What's going on everyone? This is Gaurav and welcome to my learning channel. So in today's video, we'll learn about group by statement in MySQL and how to use it for aggregation. Apart from that, we will also take a look at order by statements in MySQL and we will showcase the usage of each one of these by some sample queries. So without any further delay, let's get started. Now, before we dive into the details, I just want to spend a quick 1 minute to give an introduction about the table that we're going to reference for today's video. So our table name is going to be GA1, which is your database.myfirst_table. This table has 5 different variables. So you have customer ID, customer name, age, state, and spend for each of the individual customer. And these are the different data points that you have in the table. So if you have been following my playlist, then you can see that it's the same table that we use for pretty much all of the videos. However, the content or the variable values sort of keep on changing depending upon the different use cases. So let's first of all take a look at the variable called state, which is New York, Texas, Florida, Michigan, and so on. Let's quickly run this query. Let me just expand this a little bit. I hope this is visible, but as you can see that now I have different values. So you have NY, TX, Florida, Michigan, but you can see that Texas has been repeated multiple times. And this is happening because there are multiple customers who are from Texas. So that's why you have different records with the same value. Now, what if I want to see the distinct values for state, which means that I don't want to have any repetitions in my output? So there are two different ways of doing this. So we'll first of all take a look at a simpler method, which is without using group by statement. So query for the same is fairly simple. We are essentially saying that select distinct state from, and this is your table name. So we are basically asking the system that get me the distinct value for state from this particular table. Now this is one way with which you can get the distinct value for any of the variables. So let's quickly run this query. So now you can see that you have distinct values. So you have New York, Texas, Florida, and Michigan. So there are no repetitions. There is an alternate method of doing the same thing as well. So the query for the same is select state from, this is your table name, but now you are asking the prompt that let's group by state. So let's quickly run the query just to see the output first, and then I'll explain what's happening in the code. Now you can see that the output is exactly the same as you had for select distinct state. So this is fairly simple to understand. So you're asking the prompt that get me the state from this particular table, but on top of it, you're asking the prompt to group by the contents of the table by state, and then afterwards you would like to see the output. So which means that in this table, you have New York, Texas, Florida, and then so on. So it's just going to go ahead and create the cohorts, individual cohorts for each of the state. And then if a same state is repeated multiple times, then it's not going to create an additional cohort for that. So like say, for instance, you can see you have Texas here and then you have Texas again and again. It's not going to go ahead and create additional cohorts for Texas. So you will have just one entry for Texas. And that's why as an output of this, you only see one entry for Texas, one entry for each of the individual states. So these are the two different ways with which you can get the distinct value for state from this particular table. Now, what if I want to take a look at average age of customers who are from different state? So the query for the same is going to be something like this. So let's go through the query first, and then afterwards I'll trigger the code and I'll show you guys the output. So we are selecting the state, and then afterwards we are calculating the average age for each one of the cohorts of the state, which is, let's say you have Texas and Texas has 10 different customers, then it is going to go ahead and calculate average age for all of those customers from that state, from this particular table. And then afterwards, I am asking the prompt to go ahead and group by the output by state. Let's quickly trigger the query just to see the output. Now you can see that you have 4 different states. These are again distinct state. And for each of the state, you have average age for the customer. Now, quickly going back to the earlier queries that we just wrote. So we looked at if we want to have a distinct entry for state, there are 2 different ways. You must be thinking that if we have a simpler way, then why do we want to go ahead and use something like group by statement? This is the answer, because group by statement will give you a lot more flexibility. You can do all sorts of different calculations with a group by, but you cannot do all of those things with a distinct statement. So that's why I would say that learning both of them is going to be important. Now let's take a look at some of the additional examples of things that we can do with a group by statement. So building on top of this query, which is select state, average age, we will write one more query, but we will try to calculate a lot more different matrices. So here we are asking the prompt that let's go ahead and create the cohorts based on states. But apart from that, I would like to know the average age, maximum age, minimum age, sum of age. Count star is basically number of records or the number of customers for each one of the bins or each one of the cohorts that we have, which in this case is going to be different states. Again, all of the information is coming from this table, which is my first table, and then you're grouping by state. So let's go ahead and run the query. Now you can see that as an output, you have state, you have distinct entry of state, so there is no repetition. And then apart from that, you have all of these new variables that has been created. And these are the same variables that you have created over here with the logic. Now, if you're thinking that what does as mean, this is nothing but an alias, but the new name that you have assigned to the calculated variable. So average of age, you can just leave it as it as well, but then it will have some like weird name. So you have an option that you can actually assign it human understandable variable, so which could be average underscore age. So you can potentially go ahead and use whatever name that suits you, which is going to help you remember the exact definition of the calculation that you might have done. Now, so far, we have only been using group by for one variable at a time. So we have been using group by only for state, but you can potentially go ahead and use the group by statement for multiple variables as well. The logic sort of remains exactly the same. So let's quickly try to do it for one of the use cases. So over here, we are selecting two different variables. So we have state and customer name from this particular table. And now we are grouping it by state and customer name. So whatever you select here, you have to put it as a part of a group by unless there is any kind of a calculation happening. So in this case, you can see that you have like 6 or 7 different variables, but you have only put one variable as a part of a group by. And that's because rest of the variables are calculated variables. So you are creating bins based off of this particular variable. And then for each one of the bin, you are calculating these matrices. However, if you have more than one such variable, then you will have to put the same as a part of your group by statement as well. So let's quickly run this query. Now you can see that you have for each of the individual state, you have customer names as well. Again, there is not going to be any repetition for the distinct combination of state and customer name. So you can see that you have Texas repeated multiple times, but for each one of the entries for Texas, you have different names. So you have Sam, Ram, Bam, and so on. Now, as I said, that if you have more than one variable, which is part of your select statement, and these are not any kind of a calculation, then you will have to mention that as a part of a group by statement. Let's try to take a look at one example where we won't put that variable name as a part of a group by statement. So you have select state, comma, customer name, but we have removed customer name as a part of a group by statement. So let's see what happens if we do this. This will throw an error. This is basically telling you that you will have to put both the variables as a part of a group by statement. So idea is fairly simple. If you want to have two different variables is a part of a select statement, that means that you want to create different cohorts or the groups based off of two different variables. In order for the system to create all of those in different entries, you will have to put both of these variables as a part of a group by statement as well. So if you have two variables here, you need to have two variables here. If you have more than two variables, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, then you will have to go ahead and put all of those things here as well. Again, as I said earlier, if it is a calculated variable, then it shouldn't be a part of a group by. If it is a not calculated variable, then it should be a part of a group by statement. Okay, so coming back to this query again, you can see that this query will give me a distinct combination of state and customer name from this particular table, which is your ga1.myFirstTable. Now, what if I want to see these distinct entries for only a certain set of customers with a particular filter? So in our last video, we saw how to use where condition. So let's introduce the where condition over here. Query remains fairly similar. You have select state, comma, customer name from this particular table. And then you have a group by statement, which is state, comma, customer name. The only additional condition is that you are specifying additional filter, which is where state is equal to Texas. Now, this could be any potential filter. This doesn't have to be based off of these two variables. If you have that variable as a part of this particular table, you can go ahead and put it over here. So you can have state, you can have age, you can have literally anything else that is part of the table. It doesn't have to be the variables which is part of your select statement. So let's quickly trigger this query to see the output. Now you can see that as a part of output, you only have entries which is coming from Texas. You have different customers, which is Joe, Sam, Ram, Bam, and so on. But one thing you can see that you still have a unique combination of state code and customer name. So there is no repetition happening. Now, one other thing that I want to specify here is that order of these three things being written, which is from, where, and group by, is important. So you will always write from first, and then afterwards you will put any kind of a filter, and then afterwards in the end you will have the group by statement. In case you change the order, then you will get an error. So let's quickly try to do that just to see what type of error do we get. So here I have changed the order, and now I have from, group by, and then the last one is your where statement. Now you can see that in the code itself I'm getting the error. There is a red mark here, which is essentially trying to tell you that where should come before. So if you hover your cursor over here, you can see the prompt is telling me where is not valid at this position, expecting end of file. However, let's still try to go ahead and trigger the query just to see the output. Again, as you can see that you will get an error here. This last entry is for this particular query that I just triggered. So as a rule of thumb, always have the order in place, which is you will get started with from, and then afterwards you will have any kind of a filter, which will be written right after where clause, and then the last one is going to be group by. Now let's go ahead and quickly re-trigger this query just to see the output one more time. Now you can see that you have Texas, and then afterwards you have all of these customers. Now one other thing to note over here is that these customers customers, their name is not in the alphabetical order, but they are basically randomly assigned. And I wouldn't even say that they're randomly assigned, but it's more of the way once the system performed the calculation, which is getting all the distinct entries, whatever the order was in the output file has been shown as a part of your screen. But what if you want to have a certain order, which is what if you want to see the output alphabetically? So you would like to have A, B, C, and so on, or reverse alphabetical. So let's try to do that. For that, I would like to introduce another clause which is called order by. So the query for same is going to be fairly simple. So first of all, you will go ahead and write the select statement. So you have select state comma customer name. Let's say these are the two different variables that you would like to get started with. Then as I said earlier, that you should go ahead and write the from, where, group by. So these are the three different entries that we have already seen. And then the last one is going to be order by customer name. Now, if you don't specify any additional condition and simply write order by and then the variable name, then depending upon the type of variable, let's say if it is a varchar, then it will simply sort all the output alphabetically. If it is a number, then it will sort the variables smaller to larger. So let's quickly trigger the code to see the output. Now you can see that things are in alphabetical order. So you have AAM, BAM, and all of these things are in alphabetical order. Again, as I said, that given the fact that this variable was a varchar, that's why it is coming in alphabetical. If this would have been a number, then the output would have been like the smallest number will become first, and then afterwards larger and larger. You can also go ahead and sort the output in the descending alphabetical. So for that, you simply have to write DESC right after this variable name. So let's quickly trigger the code just to see the output. So in this output, now you can see that Sam is coming first, and then afterwards Ram, Joe, and so on. This is because this is sorted reverse alphabetical. So as a part of order by, you can have multiple variables as well. So you can have customer name followed by any other variables, which is fairly similar to what you have seen for select statement or a group by statement. So let's take a look at one such example. So in this query, I'm selecting everything from this table, and then I'm asking the prompt to sort the output by state, ascending order, ASC or ascending order, and customer name, descending order. Sorry, it's a cust underscore name, cust name in the descending order. So let's quickly trigger the code to see the output. Now you can see that you have all of the variables in that table, and 100% of the data has been populated because there are no filters. And in terms of sorting, you can see that the data is sorted based off of state code ascending and followed by customer name descending. So we'll take one quick example, like say for instance you have, so in Texas you can see customer name is sorted reverse alphabetical, and when it comes to the state, overall it is sorted alphabetical. So you have F followed by M followed by N followed by T. Hopefully this video gave you a good idea about how to use a group by statement and order by in SQL and what are some of the different use cases. I would say the best way to learn this is by just simply doing a practice. So I would definitely encourage you to think of different use cases that you have in your mind and try to write a query for that. And it's totally fine if you have some errors in the beginning, but more you practice, less number of errors you will make. So in our next video, we'll learn about joins. So first of all, we'll get started with understanding what is join. What does it mean to join two different tables? Concept of join sort of remains exactly the same when it comes to different coding languages. So irrespective of if you're using SQL or Python or R or any other language, the concepts of different type of joins sort of remains exactly the same. So once we are clear on the different concepts of joins, then we'll get started with some of the sample queries. So we'll take a look at sample queries for each of the individual type of joins. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much, and I wish you best of luck in your learning journey.